No matter who you voted for in the 2020 election, you were part of the most participated in election in modern American history, right? More than 160 million people voted in this election. 66.7% of eligible voters. Most people, the highest percentage of eligible voters since 1900. This comes after a record-breaking midterm election of 2018. So pull up the article here, in which 49% of American eligible voters voted in that election, the most since 1914. Which unfortunately a whole lot of people don't vote in midterms. And so the question I ask, and I think a lot of people are asking this morning, is how do Democrats keep fucking this up? How do they keep screwing up these elections, right? Just as Bill Maher asked on his show.
You are asking a question I've asked many, many times on this show, which is why in so much of this country is a D next to a politician's name so toxic? So toxic that no matter who they're running against. I mean, Roy Moore squeaked a victory out. A child molester, that much he lost by. Why is the D so toxic? And you talk about this too.
I've been shocked, Bill, when I go around the country, how working class Americans feel like the Democratic Party does not care about people like them, is not talking to them.
Yes, Roy Moore almost won, and as Bill Maher suggested, he's an alleged child molester. And unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Here's Democrat Teresa Greenfield debating Joni Ernst in Iowa.
Very much. I might have missed it, but I don't think you answered my question. What's the break-even price for soybeans in Iowa? You grew up on a farm. You should know this.
I think you had asked about corn, and it depends on.
I asked her corn.
It depends on what the inputs are, but probably about $5.50.
Well, you're a couple dollars off, I think, here because it's 10:05. So, well, we'll move on to something else then.
And I don't think Ms. Greenfield answered either.
She actually did with the price of corn. We'd asked for the price of soybeans from you, Senator. You want to take another crack at it?
No, thank you.
Yeah, does not want to take another crack at that question. And Ernst actually won that election. And it doesn't stop there. Here's Democrat Jon Ossoff debating Republican David Perdue in Georgia.
You've continued to demean yourself throughout this campaign with your conduct. First, you were lengthening my nose in attack ads to remind everybody that I'm Jewish. Then when that didn't work, you started calling me some kind of Islamic terrorist. And then when that didn't work, you started calling me a Chinese communist. It's ridiculous. And you shouldn't do everything that your handlers in Washington tell you to, because you'll lose your soul along the way, Senator.
Ossoff won that debate by such a wide margin that David Perdue refused to debate him again. And still, Perdue is winning. Even though the race is heading towards a runoff, he actually beat David Ossoff in the election by just a couple votes. Also in Georgia, Democrat Ralph Warnock and Republican Kelly Loeffler are heading to a runoff. And this comes after Loeffler and Perdue came under a lot of fire for shit like this.
Both of Georgia's U.S. senators are under fire for allegedly trying to profit from the coronavirus pandemic.
Records show that Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue bought and sold stock shortly after a private Senate briefing on the virus.
It stinks to high heaven that those representing their constituents, hold on, Charlie, that people representing constituents have actually safeguarded their own money ahead of letting other people in their state know beyond some of their big donors.
Yes, while Loeffler and Perdue were telling their own constituents that everything was going to be okay, they were selling their stocks and taking care of themselves. And still, they're likely to be reelected. Kelly Loeffler owns the WNBA Atlanta Dream, and her players let her know exactly what they think of her when they wore these shirts, asking asking voters to vote for her opponent, Warnock. And so, when it comes to all the main issues in America, we're talking gay rights, abortion rights, gun rights. Democrats actually have a majority of the country on their side. But they never seem to win, right? They might have won the presidency this year and the House and potentially the Senate, but why is this even a competition? After the chaos of the pandemic, the Trump presidency, the Supreme Court fight, Democrats actually lost seats in the House in 2020 and right now have only added 1 seat in the Senate. So, Kelly, my question to you is, why is the Democratic brand so toxic to millions of Americans?
So I appear to have lost you again, but really whether or not the Democrats lost this election is very much on your viewpoint. I believe that we're looking at, a very, very hard map for Democrats. There's been a lot of gerrymandering, a lot of state houses are now Republican, and has been hurting the Democrats. I think Joe Biden successfully going up against somebody as popular with their base as Donald Trump really says a lot. So I don't even know if I would agree that the Democrats lost, even though they are facing this very tough future with the Senate, because they have to win both of those Georgia races. Now, it looks like Loeffler will lose to the Democratic challenger in the runoff if things stay the same. He beat her ahead of time, but it went to a runoff. Whether Purdue will lose as well, I think, is more in question. Like you said, Loeffler and Purdue facing similar scandals, but Loeffler seems to be more tied with it. Seems like her challenger has more support. So really, I think what we have to look at is whether Ossoff can ride those coattails and whether he can keep putting up performances like he did in the debate to really distinguish himself from just any other candidate. Because I think that if he can't hit home, he won't win.
And the debate definitely moved the needle for him. It helped him out quite a bit, but still, I mean, after that horrible performance where Purdue refused to debate him again, how is it this close? Yeah. I mean, it seems like people are they refuse to vote for Democrats no matter what.
Well, I mean, incumbents are always hard to take down, especially if you're trying to take down a red legislator in a red state. Historic turnout there in Georgia. So I think all that Stacey Abrams is doing is working. I think that Democrats have a chance to win it. I don't know how much of a chance they have to pull off both races, but I do know that we're about to see millions of dollars dumped into Georgia. I know that Georgia is going to be a concern for Republicans from now on, because it wasn't that long ago that Virginia was a reliably Republican state, and now it is a reliably blue state. And North Carolina perhaps might have gone blue were it not for, a lot of Republican efforts to keep it from going that way, whether by hook or by crook. But I think Republicans have a lot to worry about from this election, and it's not just limited to Georgia.
I kind of thought going into this election, especially when you look at polling on what issues where Americans are at, or a lot of issues, I was in the same boat as you. I kind of thought, all right, Republicans, this is a dying brand, this is a dying party, especially when I look at how millennials vote, how younger people vote, and the demographic shift there. But after this election, I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump got 71% million votes. He actually got more votes than Obama did when he ran in 2008 and 2012. Now, obviously, a lot of that's due to changing. There are more eligible voters now, but still,
Right.
It seems like the Republican brand is looking better than it has in a long time.
I mean, I'm not even sure if that's true. I think we have a little bit of the cult of personality. I think we have a little bit of, with such high turnout, it's hard to say, but I wouldn't say that. I think Republicans are in the same position they were before, where, if they can take the Electoral College, they can keep winning this thing. But I think they're out of the running for the popular vote. I think we saw the strongest showing we're going to see for this Republican Party, for the one we're seeing right now in the Trump era, with Trump at the head of it. I think this is the strongest showing we're going to see. And if he's not at the head of it, or if he's in jail, or if he's facing perhaps more Republican opposition, it's going to be a lot harder in 2024. The Republicans are a traditional opposition party. They do it very, very well. They're much better at opposing than they are ruling. But I think that Republicans have a real concern here. Looking at Joe Biden's margin of victory, we're talking about these massive numbers of people we saw vote. Of course, we talk about that Joe Biden got even more than Obama got. We talk about that Trump got even more. But we're seeing a defeat on a percentage scale like we haven't seen in decades. Like I said, it's more than what we saw with Reagan. It's more than what we saw with Nixon. So this is just a massive scale from what we're seeing right now. I mean, of course, only you really could see something just crazy in percentage terms. And I think there's a few areas for both parties to be worried about. I think that, of course, we're already seeing people talk about Cubans shifting even harder than they have before away from the Democratic Party in favor of Trump. We also saw a lot of South Texas Latinos voting for Trump. Starr County, which hasn't elected a Republican since 1906. I don't even know if they've had anyone on the ballot since then. From what I heard a Republican operative saying earlier today. But, they picked up a much, much larger share of the vote than they normally do. And so I think the Democratic Party needs to be concerned about that, despite the fact that they see a huge growth with the Latino vote elsewhere. But for Republicans, the big concern here is the military vote. For a long time, it's been very, very, very secure for Republicans. They've been the party of defense, the military, expanding the military. And they saw, I believe, a 20-point drop in support over 4 years.
I haven't seen that.
Which is wild. You're looking at those provisional ballots, the overseas ballots from military members and their families. 20 points is a lot. I mean, even if you're still winning it, you'd rather win it by 27 points than you would by 7 points.
Absolutely. And one of the things I also saw that I thought was very interesting, and I think it kind of speaks to the perhaps toxicity of the Democratic band, is that Trump actually increased his vote among Muslim Americans.
Yes.
From, I believe it was 14% in 2016 to 17% in 2020.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we're looking at the unstoppable force, immovable object. And, Trump built his support with Muslim Americans. He built it in a lot of Latino areas. Even some Black communities did not turn out for the Democratic Party at the same level, comparatively speaking, to the share of the vote Trump got. So I think for somebody who picked up in all of these categories, to lose is and lose by this margin, despite all of those gains, really historic for Biden. Again, what I said, put together a winning coalition because it is such a diverse coalition. We'll have to see whether or not he is able to successfully govern the country with that or not. But I think, a lot of this is, of course, comes down to, we see different racial groups voting along those lines. But for me, I think the numbers I've seen on income are startling. I saw a statistic earlier today that Joe Biden won voters who make less than $50,000 a year. He won them by 15 points. He won people making under $100,000 a year by 13 points. And Trump won over $100,000 a year by 11 points. And I mean, that's a massive class disparity.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's definitely the question going forward is like, can Biden kind of keep that coalition going together?
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for watching Citizen Pete. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, click that little subscribe button, maybe the like button, and hey, maybe just leave a comment. I want to know what you're thinking. What do you think about all the politics, the news, and all the stuff that's going on in our country?